Today, we're going to begin talking about stress. Stress. A whole summer talking about stress. So, if you don't have any stress, you can take a nap right now. Realize that if you do take a nap, you're probably going to stress me out, so maybe you shouldn't. That's probably a good idea. If you are breathing, if you are alive, you have stress. It comes from so many different directions in our lives. It has many different forms. Some of you right now are experiencing stress in the form of a teenager. Some of you in the form of a parent, or a sibling, or a spouse, or a coworker, or a pastor. Some of you get stress from church. Some of you get stress from work, in finances and health. Look, we all have stress. It comes from all different places. We all experience it. And unfortunately, this summer, if you're hoping that at some point in the summer, I'm going to tell you there's a magic formula to not have stress in your life, it's just not going to happen. Jesus said quite the opposite. He said that in this life, you are going to have trouble. Stress exists for all of us. But what God does a really good job, though he tells us that we're going to have trouble in this life and challenges and difficulties, he tells us and helps us to manage that stress. Do you realize that the things that cause stress in our lives are just the tips of the iceberg? More often than not, the majority of stress that we feel in our lives, we generate on our own. More often than not, we have something that comes into our life that prevents us from doing what we thought we were supposed to be doing. And what do? We begin to build it up in our minds. We begin to complain about it. We begin to fixate on it. And pretty soon, we've got something big enough to sink the Titanic. See, what we're going to talk about this summer is managing stress. We're going to talk about all the stuff that exists under the water that's going to sink a lot of our ships. Stress is one of those things that prevents us from living the life that God intended for us to live. And the question then that we have to start off with is, what is the life that God intended for us to live? If you're looking for the meaning of life, here it comes. Ready? Romans chapter 12. Therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, I urge you to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this age, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind so that you may discern what is the good, pleasing, and perfect will of God. Your purpose in life is to offer yourself up as a living sacrifice. Your purpose in life is to worship God. And when you are not changed and conformed by this world, but rather transformed through the act of giving yourself to God, then and only then will you be able to discern the good and perfect and pleasing will of God in your life. That's the purpose of life. The problem is that our stress gets in the way. Now, my boys have volunteered to help me with an illustration this morning, so come on up, boys. And by volunteered, I mean I told them. So come stand. One of you can stand over here. One of you can stand over here. All right. So we just talked about how our purpose in life is to offer ourselves as a sacrifice to God. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a worship pose. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to lift your life up to God like this. Okay. Put your hands up. And then it says that when you do that, you are transformed. You're not the same as the world anymore, but you're going to be transformed by renewing your mind. So that means your eyes are fixed on God and your hands are lifting up to Him. This is our worship pose. This is what everyone's heart is supposed to look like every single day. Okay? Now, just hold that. Now, don't move. I have something for you. Okay. Got one for you. One for you. Now, in one of your hands, I want you to reach down, pick up that jug of stress, and then take up your worship pose again. Just go ahead, just one hand. I want you to, okay, now, just hold it up there. Hold it up there. Now, all right. Now, if you need help, just let me know. Do you need any help? Do you need help? You get just okay. Here, hold on. Here, let me take that. Let me take that from you. Let me take this one from you too. Okay, hold on. Let me. Okay, worship pose. Where is it? There it is. Worship pose. I have something better for you. There's a jug with a little less stress in it for you. Go ahead and pick that up in worship pose. Now hold it up there, and just hold it up there while I finish preaching, okay? Now, if you have any problems, you just let me know. You can interrupt me partway through, but you just hold that while I'm preaching, okay? Okay, good. Doing all right? Your shoulder's not sore or anything, is it?
Yes.
Your hand's not getting heavy or tired?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah? All right, well, here, let me take that from you, too. Simon, do you need some help? Yeah? Let me take. All right, thanks. You guys can go sit down. Thank you, boys. Have you ever noticed in life, you're going along, you think things are great, right? Your eyes are up, your hands are up, you're living as that living sacrifice to God, and then guess what happens? A big old jug of stress gets dumped into your life, right? And it's really hard. Did you notice what happened when I gave Simon that first jug? Did you see his face? Have you ever had that moment in life where, what was that? What? I just got hit out of left field. I was not expecting that. And what you do is you know the life that you're supposed to be living, right? You know the life of worship that you're supposed to be living. You know what God's intended for you. And you try to pick up that big old jug of stress and go right back to that place. But how long are you focused on what God has in store for you? How long can you worship Him while you're trying to hold that big old jug of water up? Right? Do you notice that even though Jonas did a good job, right? Jonas did a good job. He got that jug all the way up there, and his eyes are fixed up there. But I can guarantee you he wasn't thinking about what God was saying. He was thinking about how that shoulder has got to hold out for this whole sermon, right? When you take that big stress, sometimes we have little stresses in life. You know that even that little stress, you can think, I've got this handled. This isn't so bad. Just a little speed bump. And we pick up that jug of stress, which doesn't seem like very much. But the longer you hold that up in the air, the longer you try to carry the stress of this life, the more your attention is going to start to deviate. The more you're not going to be focused on Him, you're going to be focused on that jug of stress. And pretty soon, you're not worshiping Him. You're not offering yourself up to Him. You're trying to just get by one day after the other. You are more focused on that jug than anything else in your life. You're more focused on the pain and suffering that you have as a result of the jug and not on the solution, right? You're fixated on the problem and just not the solution. What we need to talk about is how you manage it. Did you notice that I told my boys at any point in time that all they had to do is ask me for help and I'd take care of it for them? Did they ask me? No, right? Why? Because we pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps, don't we? We can take care of this. If I can't, I'm somehow weak. If I can't take care of this problem in life, then who am I? Who am I to bother? Who am I to bother my Father to help carry the stress and the burdens of my life? And so we try. We try to carry those things further and further, and yet we don't accomplish nearly as much as if we just turn to Him. Psalm chapter 1. Psalm chapter 1, David begins in this very first psalm. There's 150 psalms, and this first one is the foundation. And this is the foundation of what we're going to talk about for the entire summer. So if you don't get this today, it's going to be hard to follow along later. Okay? David begins by talking about how we manage trouble in this life. Now, I know we read this responsibly, but let me read it out loud once again. There's only 6 verses. How happy is the man who does not follow the advice of the wicked, or take the path of sinners, or join a group of mockers. Instead, his delight is in the Lord's instruction. He meditates on it day and night. He's like a tree planted beside the stream that bears its fruits in season, whose leaf does not wither. Whatever he does prospers. The wicked are not like this. Instead, they are like chaff, and the wind blows them away. Therefore, the wicked will not survive the judgment, and sinners will not be in the community of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked leads to ruin. There's only 2 things you have to remember today, okay? 2 things when dealing with stress in life. The challenges, trials, and tribulations of life. David gives us 2 things that will help us to minimize and manage every stressor in your life. The first one is this. You have a choice in the way that you approach challenges, trials, tribulations, and stress. And David says that you need to approach stress with an opportunity and seeing it as an opportunity for spiritual growth. Do you notice that he begins this chapter like this? He says, how happy is the man who does not do this? See, you have a choice. We all have a choice. We don't always have a choice in what diagnosis the doctor's going to give us, right? We don't have a choice in that. Sometimes we don't have a choice of whether we lose a job or keep a job. We don't have a choice in the way that people respond to us. We don't have a choice in a lot of things that happen to us in life. But what we do have a choice in is how we respond to every single one of those things. And David says, how happy, how blessed. This person will receive the joy of the Lord if they don't respond in this way. He doesn't say how happy is the man who never experiences stress, who never has trials or tribulations. What he says is, how happy is the person who responds to those trials in this way. You have to approach stress with an opportunity for growth. What does James tell us to do? Does anyone remember that one? James chapter 1?
Count it all joy.
Count it all joy. I hate that verse, right? Count it all joy whenever you experience trials. Oh, come on. Knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. Endurance must do its complete work so that you may be mature, complete, and lacking nothing. In order for you to arrive to that place, the place where God intends for you to be mature, lacking in nothing, to be complete, endurance has to do its work. But endurance can't do its work unless your faith is tested. And faith isn't tested without trials. And so when we see a trial in our life, when we see a challenge in our life, we should see the end result. We should approach every difficulty in life in this way. We don't have to like the trial. We don't have to like the tribulation. We don't have to like the stress. But what we should count joy is this. We can see to the end that God says that I want to make you complete. I want to make you mature. I want you to be lacking nothing. I want you to have my joy. And in order to have that, you have to see that these things have to happen in your life. David tells us that the way that we approach stress in our lives, we can see the joy that comes after because we can see God working his perfect work in us. Well, what's the alternative? Right? He says that there are three things that if you don't want to be happy, you can do these three things. Okay, so you can take this either way, right? Stress comes in your life, challenge comes in your life. You can either count it all joy, see that God is going to work and this is an opportunity for spiritual growth, or you can do this. There's three things that he says about someone who doesn't want to be blessed in life. So if you don't want to be blessed, here you go, listen up. You can follow the advice of the wicked, take the path of sinners, and join the group of mockers. Do you know that this isn't just talking about unbelievers, it's talking about believers as well? Because we do this all the time. Do you know what we like to do? This is I didn't see this. We see it most clearly when we look at the election results. If you look at the map, you know the map of the election. You know when you see the pockets of red and the blue and stuff like that. Do you know we like to gather together in groups that think just like us? Did you know that? Birds of a feather flock together. It's the simplest thing. It's been around for a long time. Do you know what we want to do when we don't like something? We want to find other people who say it's okay for you not to like this. It's okay. We're going to enable you and allow you to continue down the path that you're going on. We're going to surround you and comfort you and build you up with the advice that isn't coming from God himself. See, what we tend to do is this. We want to escape trials and tribulations, don't we? How many people here have said, Lord, please give me another stressor in my life? Right? I've never done that. Look, I'm preaching to myself today. Right? It's the same thing. Every time something happens in my life, I'm like, Lord, get me out of here. Lord, get me out of here. But there are times, see, even when Jesus prayed in the garden, he said, Lord, take this cup away from me. But what? Not my will, your will be done. It's okay to not like the situation that you're in. But Jesus didn't say, Lord, take this cup from me, but even if you don't, I'm going to get out of it anyway. Right? Imagine what would have happened then. What Jesus said is that he understands that sometimes in life that the good has to come through the suffering. And we have to learn to stop trying to escape out of the suffering and start looking in the suffering, looking to the Father to see what it is that he's trying to teach us, what it is that he's trying to do in our lives, how he's trying to grow us. We need to stop taking the advice of those that don't want to hear God's opinion about it. Right? How often do we do that? How often do we ask, God, I see this big problem in my life. What is it that you want me to do? How are you trying to change me in this? Right? That's not how our prayer life goes. Our prayer life goes, get me out of this. And if you don't get me out of it, I'll find a way to get out of it. David says that if you want to have the joy and the blessing of the Lord, you have to stop taking the advice of the wicked. You have to start seeing trials and tribulations for what they are, an opportunity for spiritual growth. When you start taking the advice of the wicked, guess what happens? Pretty soon you're walking down the path of sinners. What's that mean? Well, have you ever had someone tell you you're justified in your anger? It's okay. They did that to you. You shouldn't be mad, right? You shouldn't forgive. You don't have to forgive them. It's okay. You can do whatever you want. No, look. We've had those friends, right? What we need more of is we need more people who are willing to speak truth in love. And that is, yes, there's this horrible thing happening, but how would Christ have you to respond and grow in this situation? That's the path you need to be walking down. That's the narrow path. That's not the easy path. That's the narrow path. That's the path of forgiveness and kindness and love. David says if you want the blessing of the Lord, if you want to have the joy of the Lord in this life, you have to stop walking the path of the world and start walking the path of righteousness that Christ has called us to walk. Do you know where you get when you walk the path of sinners? You end up in a group of sinners. That's where you go. You all go to the same place. That's exactly where we're headed. And pretty soon, whether you're a believer or an unbeliever, when you start listening to the world, when you start following the world, pretty soon you will start to resemble the world and not the Christ that you've been called to resemble. See, when the world looks at you and they have to ask, I wonder if they're a Christian or not, guess what? You've gone the wrong way. You've allowed the trials and tribulations of this world to allow you to be conformed to this world and not transformed by the renewing of your mind. You're not being shaped to be in the image of Christ anymore. You have blended in. And guess what kind of use you are now? Not much of anything. David says if you want the joy of the Lord, if you want the blessings of the Lord, when trials and tribulations come, you have to see it as an opportunity for spiritual growth. And the second thing that you have to remember is that when you see that opportunity, now it's time to draw near to God. That's your response. In every trial, in every stressor, draw near to God. And he says this is what it is. The person who draws near to the Lord, he finds his delight in the Lord's instruction. He's looking for the answers. Not from the world. He's looking for his answers from the Lord. He says his delight is in the instruction of the Lord. He meditates on it day and night. And because of that, he is like a tree that is planted by a stream. The leaves never are continuously green. They continue to bear fruit. Everything that they do prospers. So think about this for a second. Right? We as believers, if we respond the way that David's telling us, we are planted next to this stream. We send our roots down and we are drawing our refreshment, our nutrients, everything that we need, we are drawing from the stream. Now, what happens when the drought comes? What happens when the sun beats down and it's getting hot outside? We know what it's like hot outside, right? What happens? Who bears the burden of the drought? Is it the tree or is it the stream? Because as long as the tree is next to the stream, and as long as the stream has water, the tree will continue to get exactly what it needs. And though it will feel the heat of the sun, it will never experience the fullness of the trial and tribulation because it is being supported, nurtured, cared. It finds its refuge and its refreshment from the stream. That's what we're supposed to be like. It doesn't say that there never will be a drought again. It says that when the drought comes, when the sun comes out, guess what's going to happen? You're going to be able to look at that tree and you're going to say, why is it that that person is so green going through this kind of a drought? Why is it that this person is prospering, is bearing much fruit of the Spirit, and yet all these horrible things are happening within their lives? When you look at that person, you can tell the difference. See, in America, what we like to do is we like to plant ourselves way over here. And then maybe what we'll do is maybe we'll get a micro irrigation or micro drip system and bring the water from over. We don't want to be close to the stream. We want to be off over here on our own. And then when things get really bad and our leaves are starting to droop, we want someone to bring us a little water and splash us and kind of coddle us to get us through to the next point. But David says if you want to be blessed by the Lord, You can't be over there. You have to be over here. See, Jesus told the Samaritan woman at the well, he said this. He said, whoever drinks the water that I offer will never go thirsty again. Because what I offer is living water. What I offer is eternal water. It's never going to end. See, the resources and the refreshment that God provides for us is never going to stop. And so you have to be planted next to him. In your trials and tribulations, you have to see it as an opportunity for him to work. And then you have to draw close to him and let him carry the burden. Don't carry the burden on your own because you're not going to be able to. So the question is, how do you draw near to the Lord? Does anyone have any ideas? Have I ever talked about this before? There's 4 ways. How did Jesus put it? I'm the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me, I will abide in you, and you're going to bear much fruit. Look at all these look, you're good agriculturalists. You know these references, right? How do we abide in Christ, right? In the word, in worship, in prayer, and in fellowship. And how do I know those are the ways that you abide in Christ? How do I know those are the sources of your strength, the way that you will overcome every stress in your life? How do I know that? Because the first thing that we do when we face trials and tribulations in this world is we run from all 4 of those. Right? When I'm having stress in my life, I don't want to be among you people. Right? Because you might speak truth into my life, and I don't want to hear that right now. I want to have a pity party. I don't want people to be in my business. What's my prayer life turned around to? It comes down to this. Lord, take care of this. Never mind. I'm going to take care of it myself. I'll just avoid it. Right? I'm not living a life of worship. What I'm doing is I've taken my big old jug of stress and I'm kicking it down the road, rolling it. My eyes aren't fixed on him anymore. See, the way, and we talked a couple of weeks ago, the best tool for the enemy to use to keep you from living the life that you're supposed to live in him is to keep you isolated. He keeps you away from the word. He keeps you away from worship. He keeps you away from prayer. He keeps you away from God's people who are supporting you in all of those things. Look, those first 3 things are hard to do on your own, right? If we had to take a poll of how many people have a daily devotion or in the Word regularly, we're not going to raise hands, right? That's the first thing that goes when you get busy, right? It's the first thing that goes when when things are on your mind. You know, when you're laying awake late at night, thinking about all the things that are going wrong in your life, how many of you stop and say, you know what, since I'm awake anyway, why don't I get my Bible out? We're more often to flip the TV on, aren't we? See, our troubles are this. Our trouble is that when we are most stressed and most challenged in life, we don't draw near to the Lord. Why? Because we don't see it as an opportunity for him to work. We see it as a way for us to pull ourselves up. And when we can't, we just try to avoid everything else in our life. David's really clear. And as we walk through the Psalms through the entire summer, what we're going to learn is this. When you draw near to the Lord, his resources and his intent towards you is perfect and eternal. We're going to talk all summer long about the ways that he meets your needs, the ways that he addresses your stress, the ways that he will refresh you and renew you and restore you when you think life has beaten you down as far as you possibly can go. But first, you have to recognize it's an opportunity for him to do those things. It's your choice. David says, happy is the one who chooses to do this. You've got to choose. You've got to choose to allow him to work in your life. You have to choose to draw close to him, to draw your refreshment from him so that he might do his good and perfect work, so that you might be made complete, that he might restore you to the fullness of how he intends for you to live in a way that is glorifying and honoring to him. Not stress-free, but stress-less. Let's work towards a summer where our stress is less and less. And God's power is revealed more and more, not for our glory, but for his glory. Let's pray. God, we try too much on our own. We try too much on our own, and we beat ourselves up, and we build things up in our minds, Lord, and we worry and we fret, but you've told us that we should cast all of our anxieties and cares on you because you care for us. Your desire is for us to reach out to you, for us to draw closer to you. Lord, help us to be people of the word. Help us to be people of worship. Help us to be people of prayer. Help us, Lord, to encourage one another, to speak words of encouragement into each other's lives, to bear one another's burdens, so that you might be glorified, that we might live the life that you intended for us to live. that you might be praised and glorified in our lives every single day. In Christ's name I pray.